What's up guys, Banditex here. Before we begin today's episode, I want to have this little message with you guys. This year's event hasn't been that enjoyable for me. This is because the games I've done haven't been that great so far, and fatigue is already kicking in. Now I don't want to just abandon Sonic Timber right now, but due to the amount of games featured in today's video, and because I don't have much to say on some of them, I want to try a different style, so that way I can whip these out quicker. None of the games I will look at today will be graded since some of them are in genres that aren't really my thing. Plus, because of that and the shorter look each game is getting, I don't think it would be that fair. Let's start with one of the games that I was going to tackle last year but just didn't. Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. This game was made by Compile, and is actually a reskin of the game they made called Puyo Puyo. This reskin practice was common at the time since cutesy Japanese media hadn't caught on in North America yet, but bizarrely enough, this game decides to use characters from the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon, and not the games. What's even more strange is that Sonic is nowhere to be seen in this game. Yeah, he wasn't in Tails Sky Patrol, but this is a game with Robotnik as the antagonist. You'd think Sonic would be the star of this one, but I guess Sonic and Tails are out getting chili dogs or some stupid shit like that. I don't like this cartoon, but I know a lot of people do, so I'll bite my tongue and just continue with the game. Thankfully, I like this game. Puyo Puyo is a competitive puzzle game with an emphasis on creating chains. The better the chain, the more garbage beans you'll create for your opponent. Your goal is to link 4 colored beans of the same color together, but because gravity plays a role in this, the beans will drop as they clear. You get 2 beans dropped into your field at a time, so you always need to account for the second bean whenever you put it down. Beans can also disconnect if you put them down and have one suspended in the air. It's pretty fun, and the game has 13 stages for you to conquer, along with an endless mode you play for points, and a 2-player mode as well. The graphics and music are good too. Your opponents have fun reactions, and songs like the multiplayer mode simply fuck. They're that good. Sonic's 8-bit soundtrack lineup has been really bland, so thankfully his home console lineup, mainline or spin-off, has fared much better. My only real issue with this game is its difficulty. You can call this a skill issue all you want, but Mean Bean has no mercy. The AI is really good at creating chains and will create tons of garbage beans for you, which will often ruin chains that you're about to set up. Mean Bean requires a lot of on-the-fly thinking and quick bean placement in order to succeed, and my poo brain can't keep up. Some people are good at this. My friend Wilfred can do this no problem. But me, I can win, but not without a lot of losses. Mean Bean does have unlimited continues, difficulty settings, and even a simple 4-character password feature, so the game isn't a complete jerk. But I think most people will struggle with this one. The easy mode is still pretty tricky, so I think that should give you an idea on what you're in for. All in all, this is a great puzzle game for the Sega Genesis. It certainly shits all over the Yoshi puzzle games I've reviewed in the past, and while the game can feel impossible at times, the game is just so much fun that I really don't mind that much. Onto the Game Gear port, which I call Mean Bean Machine due to how the E, or lack thereof, looks. This game has a couple of differences, the biggest being a new puzzle mode which serves as a neat training mode of some sort. It wasn't necessary, but it is extra content. Apart from that and a downgrade in the visuals and music, this is the exact same game. I think this version is a little easier than the Genesis version since I seem to lose less, and there isn't a difficulty selector anymore, but the challenge is still there. I don't have much more to add. I don't really have a preference on versions either. Puzzle mode is a fine addition, but part of me prefers the Genesis music, but you can't go wrong with any version of Mean Bean. Good job, Dr. Robotnik, you thick bastard.
I'll have to give myself a promotion!
Our next game is Sonic Spinball. Starting with the Genesis version, of course, this is a Sonic-themed pinball game with one big hook. You can control the ball. Instead of just being a static table, Spinball instead has an objective Sonic must clear. Collect every Chaos Emerald and then defeat the boss at the top. You have 4 levels in this game, and I have to say that I'm not against the idea. Sonic has always had that ability to roll around and bounce off of stuff. It's kind of his thing and all. But there's one thing that bothers me personally. Sonic feels really heavy. Now I get that being able to instantly snap Sonic to the left or right directions would have felt awkward and unnatural, but Sonic takes too long to change directions. which makes the game harder than it needs to be in my opinion. I don't know, I feel like if this played like Sonic 2, then the game would have been more fun, but in its current state, the game is just unnecessarily hard. Like Mean Bean, I do think that the game isn't impossible, but sometimes it can be really annoying getting Sonic to where you need to go. Despite this, I ended up liking this game more upon playing it again for this video. I still wouldn't call Spinball peak Sonic on the Genesis. I'd rather play Sonic 1 if I'm being honest. But I went from thinking very little of this game to wanting to finish it again. I only went up to level 3 for this video, but that itch to keep going was definitely there. So I guess I finally warmed up to Spinball, at least on the Genesis. Now the Game Gear version seems to get a lot more hate than the Genesis version, and rightfully so. This version is structured in a similar way to the Genesis game, but the game runs really poorly, and the physics managed to be even worse here. I think it's a fine looking game, and while the music is different, I actually prefer it to most of the Game Gear games I've looked at already. But I don't play games for the graphics and music, I play them for the gameplay, and the worse physics and inferior frame rate kill this game for me. Avoid the Game Gear version if you want to play Spinball, and just play the Genesis version. The Game Gear game is definitely beatable, but it's a really boring slog to get through. One more Game Gear game, Sonic Labyrinth. This game is basically Sonic 3D Blast, but on the Game Gear, or so it seems. You see, in this game, Sonic cannot run, so he must instead rely on his spin dash move to traverse through stages. The reason is because Eggman switched Sonic's shoes while he was sleeping, which was a really dumb plan, but whatever. In this game, Sonic must find 3 keys and then get to the end of the level. However, there is a time limit, and in order to fill it, you need to defeat Badniks or collect keys. Now, I made it clear that I don't like these isometric platformers, but Labyrinth thankfully does away with the platforming, and instead is about exploring the stages and trying to do everything while working against this ticking timer. This makes Labyrinth seem like a better game, but the game is still relatively boring. Instead of having annoying birds to collect in a series of relatively straightforward stages, you now have to navigate through these occasionally confusing mazes with keys that are much easier to grab. Neither game is that fun to play, but I'm going to give Sonic 3D Blast the W in this battle, since that game at least had a much better soundtrack, and was a technically impressive game for the Genesis. Labyrinth is just a really boring Sonic game, and nothing more than that. The final game I'm looking at today is Sonic the Fighters. Now the reason I'm not properly reviewing this game is for one simple reason. I am not a fighting game person. Now I'm fine at Smash Brothers, but when it comes to the ones with 5 million button and stick rotation combinations to memorize, I'm not very good. Because of this, I can't judge fighters like I could with any other game I've reviewed. What we have here is a 3D fighting arcade game consisting of 10 stages and 8 characters to choose from. These being Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, Espio, Fang, and newcomers Bark the Polar Bear and Bean the Dynamite. All 8 characters have their own line of moves and stages to call their own. The premise of this one is that Eggman has built another Death Egg. Tails builds a rocket to fly up to the base, but there's one big problem. The rocket only has one seat. So for whatever reason, everyone hosts a fighting tournament in order to determine who should go up to the Death Egg. Seems counterproductive considering how everyone is roughing themselves up before taking on Eggman, but whatever. I don't have a lot to say in terms of gameplay. I'm bad with fighting games, remember? I have gone back to this one multiple times since it isn't a long game, beatable in about 20 minutes or so. Despite not being a fighting game fan, I do find this one somewhat enjoyable, thanks to the fun visuals, amazing music, and I do get a bit of satisfaction memorizing certain moves. It's also neat seeing certain moves recontextualized into a fighting game scenario like the spin dash. Speaking of neat, this game even introduces Amy's Pico Pico hammer as well as another character. Sort of. There is another character named Honey the Cat who is based on another Sega character, Candy from Fighting Vipers. Apparently both games run on the same engine, which I can see just from watching gameplay footage. Anyway, Honey wasn't completed, but her code remained. She was mostly finished, but unplayable through normal means. Despite this status, she's gained a following in the fandom, appearing in both the Archie and IDW comics. Archie giving her a celebrity status of some sort, and only making a small cameo in IDW as of now. In 2012, Sega ported this game to both the Xbox 360 and PS3, and they finished her, so you can now select her by pressing start on Amy, and you'll even get a trophy or achievement for it. This version also adds Eggman and Metal Sonic to the multiplayer mode, both of which were the final bosses and unplayable in any other capacity. Real quick, let's talk about Metal. I guess because this is an arcade game and Sega wanted to milk kids for quarters, they made Metal incredibly difficult, like to a seriously cheap and unfair degree. This issue is thankfully not too bad nowadays considering how the 360 and PS3 versions give you infinite continues. Same goes to the version found in Sonic Gems collection, but still, Metal just feels really unfair. Eggman is nowhere near as hard as Metal, but I should note that failing the fight will have you lose the entire game and have to start over from the beginning, similar to the end of Sega Sonic the Hedgehog. I should also note that if you play as Sonic and get to Eggman without being knocked out once, he'll turn into Super for this fight. But considering how hard Metal is, you're more likely to get a free yacht on a snowy Friday the 13th in April while your Amazon package arrives a week early without you being notified in any way. But yeah, Fighters is alright, and for your current Xbox owners, you can still buy this game and play it if you want. Definitely go with the PS3 and 360 versions for the best visuals and extra content. This is definitely better than emulating the game on MAME. So those were the odd Sonic spin-offs from the classic era. Sorry for not doing a proper review on these, but it was either this or nothing at all. But next time I will talk about the games in a little more detail. I was going to do Sonic Jam next, but the episode was scrapped due to Saturn games not really being easy to emulate. So we're going to wrap up Sonic Temper with the racing games from this era, the Sonic Drift games, and Sonic R. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Banditex. I'll catch you in the next one.